Listen!
Hello and welcome to NVC, IGN's Nintendo podcast. This week we will be talking about how the Nintendo Switch is 4 years old. Is that old in a console's lifespan? You will find out during this episode. But also there are more rumors about a Switch Pro, and I know I said we would not talk about this anymore, but this time it actually seems pretty credible. So we're going to talk about it. I am your host, Casey DeFreitas, and this week I am joined by Brian Altano.
Hello. Happy anniversary, Nintendo Switch.
Happy anniversary, Seth Macy.
Friendo.
Your audio gate cut off the whole first half of that.
No, I dipped out. Yeah, I wanted to sound
And now
like
he's
I'm
back.
coming in.
And also Tom Marks.
Hi,
Who did do the updated review of the Nintendo Switch a little while ago. I guess,
Yeah.
How long ago was that? 2 years now?
3 years at this point. Yeah,
It seems like only yesterday
I
when...
think probably 2. It was whenever
2
they
years
added
ago.
Nintendo Switch Online officially. That's how I remember it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It was back then. I mean, it seems like it was only yesterday that the Nintendo Switch was a toddler. Now it's a full-grown child. But if you're considering actual Nintendo console lifespans, it is, I don't know, it's middle age. This is a middle-aged console now. Does it feel old to you guys, with considering that all of the new next-gen consoles are out, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S?
I mean, I'll kick things off by saying no, not at all to me. Like it's weird to think that that we're theoretically over halfway done, like over halfway past its life cycle, right? Like that is a very odd thought to me. And even like looking back at its launch when people were like, oh, well, it's a lot weaker than the PS4 and the Xbox One, right? Like, I don't really think that problem has gotten any worse over the last 4 years, right? Like, even with the launch of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, like, yeah, those are much, much more graphically powerful consoles, but I still don't really feel like the Switch is like outclassed in any sort of way. That I don't know. It just feels like it's keeping up with those, even though, yes, it absolutely has weaker graphics, right? Like that's a fact. But like, I don't know, except for the occasional game here and there that has little frame hitches or is running a little slower, like it doesn't really feel crazy noticeable given how old this tech was when it launched and how long it's been since launch. It still feels just like an awesome system to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that. I mean, I don't think it's old. It's still it is my most played console just because it is so easy to move it from room to room. I mean, in my house, I have 3 different like areas that you can play games, and I just have a different dock in each of those places. So if I want to stream or if I want to capture anything, I have a dock at my desk and a dock. It's just so much less hassle to move it from room to room. And then I also, the way I play it in bed when I should be sleeping, I have a tablet holder so I can be super lazy and put it right in front of my face because my eyes are bad. It's just so much easier to move around than my consoles. But that might be just me being weird, having multiple places to sit to play games at.
Mm-hmm.
I have the exact same situation as you. I have like docks everywhere I go. I'm never more than an arm's length away from a Nintendo Switch dock. But I did have this question that just appeared in my brain out of nowhere. Do you guys think that it would still feel old, or it would feel older if it were not handheld enabled? Because I think a lot of the charm and wonder, greatness of the Switch is because you can just pop it out and take it with you. But like if this were just a little box that sat on your TV, I think we would be like, man, they got to upgrade this one. I noticed
Right.
during Bravely Default, 2, and now people are playing it. You probably noticed it too. Like there's the checkerboarding sort of graphical trick that they do, and you saw that on like Red Dead Redemption 2 for PS4 on the 1080 version. They did the same sort of thing where there's not really enough power there to fully push those graphics. So they have to do like little, compression techniques and little tricks to make it. So I don't know. I'm torn because there's so much to be said for having the ability to just walk around your house, like you said, and just drop it in anywhere you want to.
Right. Yeah, I think like what's interesting about reflecting on this system, hybrid system 4 years in, is that it is like to truly enjoy it, there's a lot of kind of lowered expectations that have come with the reality that it has fundamentally remained unchanged since launch, outside of like a few minor tweaks. Like we wanted folders, we wanted themes, we wanted Netflix. There's all this like sort of like, you know, ancillary stuff that might make the overall experience a little bit better, but isn't mandatory or necessary. And none of that has happened. And so it's really like, it's still like the same kind of same machine we had when we were playing Breath of the Wild on day one. In terms of like how well it performs doing all the things it's trying to do, I think it's fantastic at that. But again, it's not where I go to play stuff like The Last of Us 2, or, you know, like Game Pass has its own charm. Like it is pretty much where I play indies, and I play like awesome AAA first party stuff, which is pretty much exactly what I would have guessed 4 years ago. And I love it for that. I don't think that specifically there are like some games that are being held back. Obviously we've talked about, you know, Hyrule Warriors, or, you know, Cadence of Hyrule, or what's the new one called? The
Age of Calamity.
There we go.
Calamity Brothers.
It all melts together. Sorry about that. Yeah. So obviously that one had some issues tech wise. Animal Crossing chugs a little bit when you start visiting people who go really crazy on their islands. Like there's definitely some stuff that it it's kind of dragging a little bit here and there, but for the most part, like I think they really nailed the vision here. Like I think that this is what they set out to do, and it is performing exceptionally well in terms of being this handheld console hybrid that people of all walks of life can enjoy. Like I think they absolutely nailed that, and it's fantastic to see millions of people join that sort of celebration and that ecosystem seemingly every few months. Like the sales numbers are bonkers. Mm-hmm. New games are constantly coming. You know, I'm super happy with it. Like it's a fantastic machine. I think when we all look back on this, we're going to remember the Nintendo Switch is like one of the best video game systems ever, hands down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially the funny thing also, because you're right, it does have those issues. Like it has issues even in certain games, like that you look at and you're like, why does it have issues? Right? That like they never fixed the frame rate stuttering issue in Link's Awakening, right? Which is a game that shouldn't really, when you look at it on the surface, like, and I don't know how hard, you know, optimizing games is, obviously, but like you wouldn't think that game would have issues like that. But the reason, I guess, at least especially in the last year and a half, that hasn't even really like overly bugged me that much is because you look at the other consoles and major games are having issues like that way worse on much more powerful consoles. And obviously they're much more graphically ambitious games. But when you look at like the stuttering of Link's Awakening, and then you look at the disaster that was Cyberpunk on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, like, it's hard to be like, oh, well, the Switch specifically is having performance issues, because the truth of the matter is major games across every platform are having performance issues, and it's just being scaled up to the graphics that they're trying to achieve, right? Like, so it has made the Switch feel less dated to me in its hardware, because they're still making good use of the hardware that it has.
Right.
And just to add some context, the reason why we are so confident it is midway through its life cycle, at least, is because most Nintendo systems exist for about 6 to 7 years before a new Nintendo console is released. And 4 years in, it's actually should more than half, statistically speaking, for Nintendo consoles. But the Wii U actually have an even shorter system lifespan, which was less than 5 years, 2012 to what was it, 2017?
Yeah, but that was an anomaly.
It was crazy. It was like almost exactly 4 years ago. They just said, nah, no more Wii U.
Yeah.
Something happened.
And like that's a wild thing, that right now, if the Switch performed as bad as the Wii U, we'd already be talking about whatever the next Nintendo system is. We would already know it, right? Mm-hmm. Like at this point in the Wii U's life cycle, we knew about the Switch. Is just like a weird thing to think about in terms of like, I don't feel like the Switch is that old. Doesn't feel like we're closer to their next system than we are the Switch at all.
Because
that's it. Yeah, the difference between a hit and a failure.
Yeah. The Switch has so many games too.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up, so the NPD Group's Game Pulse, according to them, there are 4,839 games that have launched on the Nintendo Switch.
Over 100 of those are great.
Yes. There's a lot of games.
There's a lot of games.
It definitely reminds me of like Steam, like 7 years ago when it started, or like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, actually is closer, when it started ramping up to people being like, yeah, there's like 4 games released a day on Steam. And then now it's like 30 games released a day on Steam.
Yeah.
And the Switch is sort of following a similar trajectory where it's like,
Yeah.
every day, a few more, like that number, that average starts creeping up. It's weird.
Reminds me of the old Wii days. Of course, the last mega hit for Nintendo when everyone was complaining, there's so much shovelware. There's so much shovelware. And there's a lot of Nintendo Switch shovelware. But the fact that there are 4,839 games for the Nintendo Switch is just a testament to how popular it is. The same with the Wii shovelware. You know, everyone always says, oh, the Wii U didn't have third-party support. But like, third parties don't care if your console isn't selling. They're not going to give you support. So it's like it follows rather than leads the success of a console. So successful console, hundreds of games about digging holes with a shovel and pushing bunnies inside of them for $1.99 with retro graphics.
Someone
I don't know.
should,
I just pitched a game.
someone should share that logic to EA though, because they don't seem to be following.
I was actually just going to say that, like, it's sort of funny to watch some of the companies that were kind of reticent about jumping on board with the Nintendo Switch, who 4 years in now are just like, here's Plants vs Zombies, because it's like, you guys missed out on some big money, like you screwed up. I'm sorry, super easy to make big money on Switch and you drop that ball. Like we've been saying for 4 years, put Dead Space on there, take a bunch of The Sims, like just insane to me that they haven't done that. Ubisoft, if you look at their strategy of basically aligning significant software with the launch of almost literally everything, even Stadia, they were there and they're like, hey, we're going to give this a shot. Like, they're smart about that, right? And they had major wins on Switch. They're consistently some of the best selling games come from Ubisoft. Like, they're super happy with their profits on there. Like, it's crazy. Yeah.
So to be fair, reportedly, Google paid Ubisoft $20 million in order to put their games on Stadia, which is insane. So that might be part of it. And I totally agree with you. I think they missed the boat by a lot. But also, as we already brought up, like, I kind of don't blame them at the outset, because like Nintendo was coming off of a disaster on a scale that like many companies do not see or recover from, right? And they did because they were so diversified with the 3DS and all these other things. But like, I kind of understand why a company would be really wary of the Switch when the Wii U was so underperforming.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but to be fair, like, EA does, like, historically, I feel like they don't really have a ton of faith in what Nintendo's doing. I think it's just, it seems like it doesn't really run in parallel or tandem with their vision of the way they want to make games, which admittedly seems like it's changing constantly, because a few years ago they're like, we don't want to support or like, celebrate our legacy content as much. We're about telling new stories and stuff. And I don't know. I feel like that every single time we have this conversation and EA is always like, we will take a wait and see approach. Here's a half broken FIFA game that's missing grass. And people are like, we're not buying that. And they're like, I guess people on Nintendo systems don't want EA games. And we're like, we don't want that. We don't want that one.
Like,
give us the good stuff.
Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I know it's remastered and upscaled to 4K, but I mean, that is also so far not coming to Switch either. I feel like that would be such an easy win, considering, I mean, if people have only stuck with Nintendo games, Nintendo systems going forward, Mass Effect is just a huge property that I'm sure many Nintendo fans would love to get into. But no news on that. Just
bring SSX Tricky to Nintendo Switch. That's all I want. Oliver Platt can reprise his role as Eddie, and Rozelle, I don't think he's doing anything right now.
Definitely not.
But so yeah, we are.
He's good.
Sorry.
Very good.
I also just wanted to mention, what should we expect for the second half of the Nintendo Switch life cycle, assuming that we have a full like, I don't know, 2 to 3 years of the Nintendo Switch before we get a brand new console. But already in this next year, we're getting, and there's quite a few games, but big games like Mario Golf Super Rush, Skyward Sword HD. We're getting a new Breath of the Wild, a new Bayonetta, and beyond that is Splatoon 3, Project Triangle Strategy, and Metroid Prime 4, and a bunch of other games that I haven't even mentioned. But what does it are there enough games that we can expect to come out to support the Switch beyond the next 2 years in the first place?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Although the further along we get, the more I'm convinced Metroid Prime 4 isn't a Switch game, and that it's whatever Nintendo has next is what that's going to be on. But yeah, there's like, I mean, these are huge games, and then it's Nintendo. They're sitting on like the most incredible surprise right now, and they're going to be like, oh, by the way, here's something you all wanted and you didn't expect this time during this Bakugan Nintendo Direct that they'll have in the future, and then they'll do a Switch on us.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to say that.
I see what you did there. No, I've been saying this for a while, but I think that this is the time to start like dipping into the the C and D tier Nintendo franchises that people really love, but really haven't gotten a lot of love in a long time. Stuff like Punch Out and give us another Pikmin, give us not to call those things C or D tier, but in terms of like popularity and sales and stuff like that, definitely not critical acclaim. I think this is when you dip into that, because otherwise you're on the hook to make a new Mario and a new Zelda game every 2 and 3 years forever, which I personally have no problem with. But I do think that you need to kind of diversify the portfolio a bit more there. And it's also what's at pretty much, it feels like almost everything that they put on Switch sells well. Like Pikmin became the fastest selling game in the entire franchise, just because there's a lot of excitement for Nintendo stuff right now, and there's a lot of people hungry for Nintendo games, and they see that first party logo, they're excited to jump in. Like I think you could sell 1 million copies of a Punch Out game in a couple of months now, and I don't know if you could have done that again at several other points in history. So this would be a good time to bring that back. Obviously, like there's stuff like Mario Kart 9, which is could easily sell another 100 million copies if they wanted it to. This is the interesting part of the Nintendo life cycle, because like it's like, okay, you're successful and you're killing it and you're doing great. Now what? What are you going to do with this level of success and fame? Like we know about Breath of the Wild 2. We don't really know what's next for the next 3D Mario or the next 2D Mario or the next Mario Kart, and so. Yeah, I mean, it's time for them to start firing on all cylinders for the next 4 years and just like really bring it home.
And when I was first planning what we were going to talk about for the show, my initial thought was like, oh, it's the 4-year anniversary of the Switch. We'll rank every 4 years. And then I quickly realized that would be a really short conversation, because Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey came out in the first year. So there's not really a whole lot of conversation to be had about that. But I just wanted to ask all of you, why is Breath of the Wild still one of our top Switch games? It's been 4 years. And for anyone also interested, I know that some of our partners at another IGN office came out with a video of like why Zelda Breath of the Wild is a game for the ages, and it's a really awesome love letter to Zelda. So shout out to that video. You should go watch it. But yeah, why does Zelda hold up? I know we've talked about it a ton, but just a quick summary.
Well, it's just that the best thing that the Wii U has ever produced, right?
It is.
It's the best game on 2 Nintendo systems. What other game can say that? So.
No, I don't know, man. It just like it changed the formula. It changed what Zelda was in such a fundamental way, and it also simultaneously changed what open world was in a lot of ways compared to a lot of other games. I think it refreshed a genre that absolutely needed refreshing in a way that has resonated and continues to resonate as other open world games kind of the old style continued to come out, and people were kept being like, oh yeah, but this isn't Breath of the Wild. And like, it just did something that like has still yet to be really replicated in the way that they did it. I think it is an incredibly old idea done in an incredibly unique feeling way. And I think that is almost more powerful than an entirely new idea in some cases. At least it has a staying power a lot more in some cases.
I mean, it's one of the most recognizable intellectual properties ever. There's nostalgia for it regardless of your age. But if you're young, it's one of the few open world games that you can buy. Like it's rated E for everyone. Like there's definitely like you don't have to sneak into GameStop with a fake mustache to buy GTA. It's not like. Yeah, like the amount of nonsense I had to do as a kid to buy like Mortal Kombat games and like hoodwink like sketchy friends' older brothers to like help us out and stuff like that. You don't have to do that here. It also has that sort of like that Minecraft magic of there's a million ways to approach this game with all of the sort of different overlapping systems in this game. Like it just makes for this incredibly delightful thing to look at even when you're not playing it. Like there are routinely new clips of people sequence breaking and glitching and just straight up magical flying across this game. Like they added a motorcycle a couple years ago. Like it just keeps giving. There people are still discovering new things in it. It is this massive sandbox. It's super fun to poke around in at your own pace. Like it is absolutely the brilliant sort of desert island game. And I think it deserves all of its sales. Do I wish it had like actual dungeons instead of 150 micro dungeons? Of course, we can get picky about little things like that. But this is a phenomenal game that will only improve from here.
This is the best game ever made by human hands in all of it. I mean, it is. It's the most magical video game experience when I was a child back in the 1980s. Let's go back. Let's take it back, kids. Start playing that sad violin music. We would buy Nintendo games. We would open up the manuals and we would look at all the drawings in there so we could imagine what those little pixelated dots were supposed to be on the screen as, imagined by the artist who drew them. And then flash forward to 4 years ago, and now we don't have to, like, all our childhood imagination has come to life. It's real now. It's like this beautiful, wonderful journey through the imagination that we had on the original Zelda. So it has that like same structure, that same feel, but now it's like, it's real. It's there and you can do whatever you want. You can run around all day long and cook things and watch the delicious soups come together and find out. I spent a lot of time cooking in that game. I just loved the sound of it. So
no,
yeah,
like to reiterate, Seth, very old Zelda players like us will recognize that I swear we've spent our entire lives looking at the promotional artwork around the original Legend of Zelda and saying, I just want a game where I can do that. Where
yes.
like you walk out, there's a huge mountain, it's in the distance, it's sort of painterly, and you're like, I want to go there and I want to do that. And who knows what happens in between. And they made it. They made that game. That's amazing.
Yeah. They made, they read my childhood dream journal and made it come to life in the most and it's not even that it's like my dreams were realized, they were exceeded. Like I didn't expect it to be so charming and captivating. And like somebody said, the best open world games are the ones that don't even care if you're there. I remember, and I'm sure I've told this before, I remember it started raining, a deer looked up, like licked itself, like its cheek because a raindrop fell on its nose or something. It didn't care that I was there. It was just a deer. I love it.
Thank you so much, Nintendo, for the Nintendo Switch's last 4 years, including Breath of the Wild. I can agree with all of you that the Breath of the Wild just has endless entertainment. There are so many different things you can do in that game and discover and explore and get better at. It is amazing. So thank you. But now we have to talk about the potential for another Switch or a Switch Pro. So there are a lot of questions I have around this. I really am unsure, but this time we got a report from Bloomberg, and their headline is authoritative. They said specifically that Nintendo plans Switch model with bigger Samsung OLED display. Is it OLED? That's probably
either or.
OLED, OLED.
Depends on if you're like in a hurry.
But that is the headline. That is a definitive this is happening headline. And Bloomberg is not a tiny site that runs off rumors. I would assume that they put some thought into their headlines. They wouldn't want to publish something that is categorically just completely wrong.
I almost said Bloomberg is a tiny man. I don't know why.
So Nintendo is allegedly set to reveal a new model of Nintendo Switch with a bigger Samsung OLED display later this year that will be able to output 4K ultra-high definition graphics when in docked mode. And the OLED panel will consume less battery, offer higher contrast, and possibly faster response time when compared to the Switch's current liquid crystal display, said Yoshio Tamura, co-founder of display consultancy DSCC. So I know that you can see if you are watching on YouTube or IGN.com, you can actually see a mock-up comparison that our friend at IGN made, Justin Vachon. And it looks, I know there are a lot of questions out there like, can my Joy-Cons fit on a bigger screen that's 7 inches? And according to this mock-up, it could work.
Yeah, for those of you not watching, essentially what you can do to get a sense of how big a 7-inch screen is look at your current Switch, right? A regular size Switch, and that sort of shiny black bezel that's around where the game actually displays, that's just all screen now. It basically would stretch to the edges of that shiny black in all directions, almost. And again, this is just a mock-up. We don't know if that's actually what it would look like, but the reason we did that mock-up and the proof of concept of it is basically saying the actual body of the Switch theoretically wouldn't necessarily have to change. It could still be the same size as a Joy-Con is on the sides of it, for it to have this pretty impactfully bigger display, theoretically.
That said, what a wonderful time it would be to reinvent the Joy-Cons. Just saying.
Yeah.
Perfect opportunity. Third tries the charm or whatever.
I guess my thought on that, though, it would be kind of like a kick in the face to everyone who has the original Switch. And I'm assuming that this bigger, better Switch will be more expensive than the current model, obviously, and kind of not great for people who are stuck with the old version and may potentially not have access to the new Joy-Cons that actually don't break. And also for people who do want to upgrade, none of your old accessories would work with it if they change the form factor too much.
Oh yeah, it's true. The Switch Online Nintendo controller and stuff, and Super Nintendo controller wouldn't work.
I mean, consumerism is like effectively like this endless train going 500 miles an hour that you can hop on at any given moment. And like that's the kind of like there's the early adopters, right? Like all of us, we were talking about how we bought our Switch on day one. It was a magical time. Like we just reflected about on 4 years. To the alternative to that is that you trade all of those memories in for not having to spend money on Joy-Con or like accessories and stuff like that, screen protectors and cases. I totally get all that. That said, I do think there is an opportunity here to, and not like they need to, lower the price of the existing Switch models by $50 each, and keeping this one in line with the $299.99 that they've launched the original Switch with. Yeah, hypothetically.
And I actually think that it will be, I think that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to see a price drop of the existing model, and I think this one will sell for $299. And the reason I say that is because the author of this article was tweeting out, and I can't remember his name right now, but basically like Samsung has just warehouses full of these OLED displays. They made way too many of them. They have a glut, and they're like, would anybody like an OLED display? If you go to the factory and you get a tour, they give you a stack of them to take. It's like Scooby-Doo and Shaggy just making a sandwich. You just shuffle them up and they just give them to you. But that being said, because there are so many, they're cheap. They're so cheap. And Nintendo heard through the grapevine that somebody had a cheap, high quality display, and their Nintendo senses started tingling. And, somebody scooped up the phone, called the factory, and like, hey, listen, I'm Johnny Nintendo. And I want to talk to your screen guy. And so I do believe that, especially with the cost of like everything else coming down for 4K, like basically we're going to be getting the guts of the whatever the Switch Pro is going to be basically the guts of the Xbox One X or the PS4 Pro. It's going to be like that sort of last generational tech stuffed inside of here with a cheap, beautiful OLED screen. And I think it's going to be $299. And I'll take that to the bank. Somebody can call me out with a $304.
Seth, throughout the rest of your life, people will tell you to be less weird, and they'll tell you to rein it in. And don't listen to any of them. No. Stay exactly where you are. In fact,
get my weight.
Because you're fantastic. We can't lose that.
But here's part of this that I didn't think that the report necessarily said that this was a more powerful Switch. It just said it has a better, bigger screen and can output 4K. Right? Like the jury is still out on whether this is actually a graphical or power upgrade of a thing. It's just it only said output 4K and bigger, better screen. That's what we know from the report.
One thing worth mentioning is that in handheld, it will still be displayed at 720, which is what the current Switch does as well. And
Right.
But even, I guess my question is, if the graphics are that much better, how will the battery would need to be improved to keep up with it, right?
Yeah, there would have to be something that would have to change here. Like they can't just slap a new screen onto the same hardware and just call it a day, right? Like we know that's true. It's just a matter of like, what are they or are they not touching, right? Like, are they going to adjust the form factor? Are they going to adjust the battery life? Are they going to make it more powerful? Or are they just going to sort of enable these things and move on? Like we don't really know based on just this report. And that's an interesting question because that could very much change, I think, a lot of whether I have a huge interest in this or not, I think. Because if it is just a bigger screen, I don't really need that because I'm not really using my Switch in handheld mode much these days, right? Yeah,
but
so
I guess
I don't know.
It's the 4K ultra high definition graphics when in docked mode. But that also brings up the question, how do developers deal with making games that work well at 720, but then also can do 4K?
Sliders. They got sliders in there.
Yeah?
You just turn them
Okay.
up and down. Yeah, that's all it is. It's a little game
I think
dev
we're
behind
being
the scenes.
sarcastic.
You know, maybe a little bit.
This is honestly, like, if you look at this is a lot more in line with what Nintendo's done throughout history than I think any of the expectations have been for the hypothetical Switch Pro to begin with. Like, I think forever people have been like, they're going to make, like, so for example, I have like the iPhone 12 Pro Max and I was playing Genshin Impact on it for like 5 hours.
Wow.
You know, on like a gorgeous screen. This thing is like 3 or 4 times the cost of what a Switch is. Like I pay for it monthly and I don't technically own it because like I'm one of those weird schlubs that like rents my phone. But that's not what Nintendo makes. Nintendo doesn't make $1,200 handhelds. They make $200 or $300 handhelds for children and adults and like they are constantly trying to find that sweet spot between how low can we go with, how high can we go with battery life, and how comfortable can we keep our price line? And that is the whack-a-mole that Nintendo has played forever and will never stop playing. And I honestly think it's kind of crazy that there was an expectation sort of from the industry as a whole that they were going to buck that trend and just suddenly make this $1,200 8K iPhone Pro Max with like, that's just not their style. And that's okay. Like, that's what I love about them because they do make the stuff that is accessible for people of all age groups and price ranges. Like, I think that's tremendously important. Like, yeah, you can, Bluetooth a controller to your phone and play Genshin Impact, but it's not Zelda, right? And I also like, I get Slack messages when I'm trying to do that. I hate it. Like I hate it so much. I love that Nintendo just makes dedicated handhelds because I'm not buying into all the bloat. And so I do think that they can keep this thing around $300. I do think that for people like Tom, it's like, what's the point, right? Like if you're comfortable with your Switch right now, especially like if I bought the Redbox Switch like a year or two ago, whenever that came out, and traded in my old one, like that thing has amazing battery life. Like I was getting like 7 or 8 hours on that, which like for someone that doesn't go anywhere anymore, just kind of like bum around on the couch, that's a good deal. So I think that's what can happen here. The most interesting thing about this is that this will hypothetically launch in November because allegedly dev kits are already out there. And if they do, that's when they're actually going, fist in fist against PlayStation and Xbox, who will hopefully have a regulated supply chain by then and will be actually able to get consoles onto the stores. And then we'll see what the sort of magnitude is of people buying into $400, $500 systems. Because you can get, the Series S for $300. You can get a digital PS5 for $400. So to have the Switch right there at $300, it has to start doing some special stuff, I think, to compete with certain other people, But they could also just do nothing and keep selling billions. So who knows?
I'm also glad that you brought up the potential November launch. I know that there was a quote saying that Nintendo planned at the Nintendo launch to increase desire around the holiday season, which is what video game companies always do. But right now, we don't really have a game to pair with a higher graphical capability console. Like right now, we're getting Pokemon Shining shining, brilliant diamond and shining pearl. Sorry, I'm still trying to remember which one goes with which. And those games don't look graphically impressive at all. They're just they're chibi, up-resed new versions of the old diamond and pearl. And I mean, it looks fine, but I don't think it looks like it needs a 4K display or increased frame rate capabilities, which is what I hope a new Switch would give us, because I'm with Tom. If all it does is give us better graphical output, I don't know if I'm going to be incredibly interested in it. And I already know I'm not going to be interested if it is bigger than our current Switch. I am not going to take that thing with me places. I can barely comfortably hold the regular Switch,
Right.
which is why I use that the janky tablet holder when I play it at home. So
no, you're right. It would be a tough sell for a lot of people. That said, I think that Nintendo's had some like their graphics recently, especially since going into HD, have been so like magnificently clean and gorgeous. They're minimalist sometimes and they're cartoony sometimes, but simple art direction and clean art direction scales super well on a 4K device. I also think that like Nintendo has a history of allowing or basically using their hardware to tell the stories that their software wants to tell. There's been that sort of pairing hand in hand. That's what's their kind of magic, is that they are, a software and a hardware company in unison. And for them to want to make something like this, it means it tells me that they have stories that they want to tell that will benefit from this. Like, I think they're looking at Breath of the Wild 2, they're looking at Metroid Prime 4, they're looking at other big games in their repertoire, and they're going, this is good, but this could be so much better over here with this, and this. So let's just make it. So that's what excites me.
I would also say that I would resist the expectation that Nintendo wants or needs some sort of graphically insane powerhouse game to sell a new system like that. Like, I don't think that that's ever been Nintendo's game. Like, even if you look at the last two major Zelda releases, mainline Zelda releases, they came out on the new system and the old system, right? Mm-hmm. The Skyward Sword came out on Wii and Wii U. Breath of the Wild came out on Wii U and Switch. Like, they don't really necessarily ever go out of the gate with a new hardware with like, here's this beautiful high fidelity game, right? They just make stylized games, like Brian said, which scale well. And like, that's true too of even Breath of the Wild, where you play Breath of the Wild on TV and that game is incredible, but like, the grass and the leaves are kind of jaggy and there's like a lot of little rough edges and aliasing and that sort of thing. And then you look at the like sort of like pirated footage of 4K Breath of the Wild on PC that people have done, and it looks unbelievable at 4K. And so if they made a system that could literally just say, hey, here's the best Zelda game ever made running in 4K, then like that's like a pretty big selling point on its own.
That's true, but at the same time, like, you look at the 3DS when they came out with the new 3DS XL, they launched it alongside Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, which would make use of the smoother frame rate and the better graphics and the little like nub that they added to it. And I wanted it because it would run Monster Hunter better. And I don't know if I would have gotten it on launch day if I didn't have a game to warrant getting it on day one. I mean, that's how I feel like most people are with consoles, unless they have a game that they need that console for. And I guess need is a pretty wide subjective term, and people aren't going to want it immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it comes down to then how they frame this. If they're framing this as a new 3DS, or if they're just framing it as the like 3DS XL or whatever, right? Like in that sort of context, because they've done both, right? They've done sort of just like, here's a bigger, nicer version of what you have, or here's the next step of what you have. And I think my expectation is more that they're just going to do the former, which is just here's a prettier kind of slightly upgraded version of what you have to tide you over for the next 3 years before the next thing comes.
Yeah, in terms of like naming conventions, I think we're far more likely to see something like the Nintendo Switch XL or the Nintendo Switch Plus rather than like the Super Nintendo Switch or something like that.
Right,
although that last one sounds. I know that one's that's the coolest one.
But I also wanted to mention back when we had the new 3DS XL, there were rumors about a new 3DS with a better chipset that would run even better, and it turned out that ended up being the Switch. So is there a possibility that all of these rumors are actually a totally new console and not related to the Switch?
I'm not thinking. I'm thinking no.
Probably not.
I'm thinking this is to the Switch what the PS4 Pro was to the PS4, what the Series, so the one.
Right.
God, the one.
Yeah, I don't know what
it's
Xbox is doing.
You're gonna be able to play the same games that you play now. I don't think they're gonna put games out that are only playable on a 4K Switch. I think this is just like we're getting over the hump until like they bring out whatever the next console is. I think that's what we're looking at right now.
Right.
I really hope that they aren't going to be coming out with games that are only playable on the Switch Pro, even though they did do that occasionally with the new 3DS. I know like Xenoblade Chronicles, I think, was only you could only play that on the new 3DS, but hopefully it is just as scarce as it was before, or maybe they learned that it just doesn't work to make things exclusive to the like pro version of a console.
Yeah, that's locking out a pretty enormous market of people who already own Switches if they do that. Yeah,
completely agree. We talked before about like, sort of punishing the consumer for jumping in early, but I think something like that would be like, it's one thing to like have to get new Joy-Con or new controllers or something like that, but to be completely locked out of first party software on a system that you bought specifically or mostly for first party software, I think would be a tough thing to sell. I think I'm wondering if this is why we haven't seen a lot more Breath of the Wild 2 yet, because it's like when we're ready to see it, we're gonna really see it, and we're gonna be like, oh, like Digital Foundry's gonna be running tech tests on it, and they're gonna be like, that was running at 4K. What are they doing over there? What are they hiding from us?
Yeah, I'm thinking if this new Nintendo Switch is coming out in November, they will reveal it at the same time as new gameplay for the new Zelda, and it'll launch at the same time. That's what I think.
They said Zelda's not coming this year.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
never mind. Theory's wrong.
That's even better.
I think you might have gotten the first half of that theory right, which is they'd probably reveal it with new gameplay, since they said that they're going to be mentioning Zelda more this year, but the launch at the same time might not line up.
Did I miss where they officially stated that the Breath of the Wild 2 will not launch this year?
I think that they say you'll have to wait a lot longer, and like I thought
we'll have more news.
They said we'll
have more news this year,
but they didn't say it's not launching this year. Did they? I don't think they did.
I don't think they did. I'm like,
I feel like I'd be like, I would be a little bit sadder regularly if I knew that already.
just
right,
like
a
notch.
I just looked up Breath of the Wild 2 release date, and the top thing is from Tom's guide. So Tom, this is from you.
This is why Google's bad.
it says somewhere between now and March 2023. So there you have it.
Wow.
So you're saying there's a chance.
I'm kind of hoping that they do a March release again. I hope that if they do a November, like if this is coming out and it comes out in November, I hope to God they have enough, because people we're so I'm still tired from the holiday season of like trying to get people, notifications of when the PS5 went up and when the X, and that's still happening. It's March.
I know. I saw it. I saw it yesterday. I was ready to send it to my friends, but it was already sold out 12 minutes after your tweet.
I just hope. I mean, it would be great for like us in commerce if it came out in November, because it'd be like, wow, we don't have to do anything. We just click a button, copy paste. Aha, we're done for the year. But
I mean, to go with what Casey was saying about like the sort of like needing a big game alongside the launch of this hardware to justify it, like that's the perfect one. Like,
oh yeah,
that's the perfect one. Repeat your success that you had 4 years ago. Do it again, but bigger.
Remember how happy we all were for like those 3-4 weeks after the Switch came out? We're all just playing and sharing our stories and just,
oh my God,
having a good cry.
I vote 2017 March is the best March in the past 4 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. If we're
ever
I'll tell you the worst one. March 2020.
Yeah.
Which is still happening.
So we got the best March and the worst March of all time in the past, at least for this decade, in the past 2 years, 4 years.
Okay. Stay tuned to IGN's top 5 Marches of the last 5 years.
Real quick, just to clarify, Onuma in the Direct in February said we can't share any. We don't have anything to share right now, but we should be able to bring you more information later this year. Which is to me implied it's not coming out this year, because why would they say we should be able to bring you more information later this year? Like,
you can hear the expectations lowering there. We should be able to bring you more later this year. Let's just like
oh no.
So yeah, that was my own projection of it not coming out this year, but I stand by that assumption of mine.
That's fair. I hope you're wrong.
Thank you all for talking with me in such detail about the last 4 years of the Nintendo Switch, and for the rumored Switch Pro that will probably not be named the Super Nintendo Switch, but probably a new Switch or something along those lines.
So,
but there's a little bit of more news this week that I figured we could touch upon, which is so Sakurai Presents was this morning, where he showed off Pyra and Mythra from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 in Smash. They detailed their movesets. Pyra is slower and stronger, and Mythra deals less damage, but is quicker. And we also got some, I don't know, is anyone particularly excited for these two characters in Smash?
Not
I know there's
excited for the people who are excited.
Yes, we're so excited for you guys.
But I did love the part in his presentation this morning where he basically showed off that drawer full of action figures that he has. Did you guys catch that? He basically has an action figure for almost everyone in Smash.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, which is super cool.
Are they not amiibos?
No, yeah, it's just like a weird Mega Man figure from like the 90s, and like, you know, like it just random toys. This Zero Suit Samus Figma, like stuff like that. I like action figures, so I'm a big fan. But yeah, so it made me want to know like what other toys he has for the next fighters coming. Are hopefully based on ones that I am more excited for than these two.
And also during that presentation, I mean, my hopes are already dashed because I know they would not announce a whole new fighter during one of these presentations, but they showed the Rathalos, and we are getting Mii fighter costumes for Rathalos armor and Hunter armor of Hunters from Monster Hunter, and they're just the sword fighter Mii's. I'm sad. That means I won't get. And also a hat for the Palico. And they're using the sword and shield in this, which makes most sense for sword fighter, but there were and now I feel how everyone else feels. Like it's like, oh, but you got a Mii fighter of it. It's like, no, I don't care. I'm not gonna use it. I wanted the real thing.
The fact that they put that a Rathalos has been a boss in Smash Bros. Ultimate since the game launched, and then they never added a Monster Hunter fighter was so sad. Like, it's just been so sad.
Just big size all around.
All around.
I heard rumors that they were planning on making a fighter, but then I guess discussion of that just fell through and just didn't work, and that they used their prototype for Monster Hunter on Byleth instead. Those are all rumors, but it makes sense because in Monster Hunter you have all of these different weapon types, so it would make sense to have different weapons on the character. So I wish that was a Monster Hunter. It's fine.
You sighed so much in the last minute.
I'm sorry. Everyone take a shot every time I sigh. I'm sorry.
Every Mii fighter is basically like that weird loop of disappointment and acceptance where you're like, well, they're in the game, but not enough. Like it's I remember when they were like Beautiful Joe, I was like, oh man, like that just means that he won't be. That sucks.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's cool to see you there.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. I'll test it out. I never stick with Mii fighters ever. I probably have like less than 2 hours of playtime with Mii fighters just because.
Most people spend their time with Mii fighters making the Mii fighter.
Yes.
And then they play it once and they're like, oh, that was fun. I'm going to make
100%. 100%. They're cool. We're also getting Arthur's armor and helm from Ghosts and Goblins that also came out recently, also another Capcom game. So if you are interested in the Pyra and Mythra movesets, you can watch that video of Sakurai Presents and get all of the information you need from that. We spent so much time talking about the Switch. Those were great discussions. But with that in mind, let's move on to Animal Crossing New Horizons Mario stuff. That is all the notes I have. I was hoping that Brian would maybe have gotten back in it because there's a warp pipe.
I have not yet.
All right. Well, there's a warp pipe and you can fast travel with it.
I will say IGN put up an awesome article this morning, basically collating a bunch of people's Animal Crossing islands that they've effectively converted their islands into side-scrolling Super Mario levels, complete with warp pipes, jumps, collecting coins, and everything. And God, I love that. That is so cool.
Very, very cool.
That is so cool. No, I'm absolutely planning on going back to Animal Crossing for this game. I haven't played the Animal Crossing in a while, so I have this weird. It's straight up textbook definition anxiety about not about worrying about getting there and letting everyone down that I've been gone so long. And I know a lot of people on social media have told me that like this game is a lot more forgiving. There's less like you come back and it looks like a John Carpenter movie and everybody's like miserable and they're like, where have you been? There's less of that. And so that's cool. I want to hear that. But still, I'm just the idea of getting back and opening that door and being like, what month is it? Like, what are you guys doing here? It's a little scary to me, but I'll do it.
The snow's gone.
That's good. The eggs are gone, which is good.
Or are they coming? Are they going to come back? Who knows?
They find have to not month. Come back. Don't do that again.
We'll have a whole NVC article, a whole NVC show just talking about eggs. It'll be ecstatic. I'll be ecstatic to talk about it.
Oh, excellent.
It was terrible.
I'm going to exit that episode the second it starts.
And let's exit right now into the Out This Week section so we can stop talking about it. So this is one of the games I wanted to play before this episode, but it turns out that no one got codes for it. I think anywhere.
No.
Harvest Moon, One World. Tom, what does it mean when people don't get early access to games?
You mean for review?
Yes.
It depends. It could mean nothing. It 100% could mean nothing. It could mean that PR does not want you playing the game early because they know what you'll say and they don't want you to say it. Essentially, is the most polite way to put that, which is, within their right as their job is to sell the game to the world. So I 100% understand that, and I don't judge them for it. It's just not very consumer friendly. Basically, it could mean nothing. It could mean that. I honestly tried to find impressions of this game, even, and basically nobody's talking about it. Harvest Moon One World is $50, and that's a lot of money. We are working on a review of it right now, I believe. But Pear would point this out that Harvest Moon is not real Harvest Moon, right? Story of Seasons is the real development team behind Harvest Moon. Harvest Moon is now this sort of just the licensed name taken compared to what the original Harvest Moon was. So
Natsume makes Harvest Moon and Marvelous makes Story of Season. Marvelous also does Rune Factory, which is also a spin-off of Harvest Moon.
Yes.
I never knew that. Wow.
This game doesn't look terrible to me, but it also just kind of looks a little flat and I don't know. It just didn't really I'm interested to see how more impressions of this come out because $50 is a lot for what looks like a game I could just play Stardew Valley instead.
Yeah, which is why I didn't buy it myself. I was like, I don't know if I want to spend $50 on a game I know literally nothing about.
Yeah.
So,
they've been really quiet about this, and that is generally not a great sign. It kind of implies that they're trying to just sort of bury it, but that's not necessarily the case. There are lots of reasons that a game could not have a lot of PR before launch and not send out codes ahead of time.
And also, just because graphically it doesn't look great doesn't mean the game mechanics are bad. So we will see. Hopefully we learn more soon. I also wanted to mention that Story of Seasons Pioneers of Olive Town is also coming out later this month. So if you are into farming sims, you're going to have two options very soon. And I'm sure we'll do a comparison of both once Story of Seasons comes out later this month. But I guess what we know about Harvest Moon One World is that we don't know a whole lot. We'll tell you more later. But also out this week is Sea of Solitude, the director's cut for $20 out on the 4th. And Tom, have any of you played this game?
I actually haven't yet because we gave it 6.5 in our review back when it launched, and I just sort of didn't want to spend the time on it. But this director's cut is supposed to be they rewrote the script, they added all new voice acting, they changed some animations and scenes and stuff. Basically, they went back and they apparently did a decent amount of like addressing a lot of the criticism. So I'm actually really excited to try it now.
Cool.
Yeah, same. I thought this looked really neat when we first saw a reveal trailer for it. So maybe I'll actually check it out now that it's out on the Switch.
It's
all
very,
this new
very
stuff.
pretty narrative, story-driven game.
Nice.
Cool. Also out this week is Kill It With Fire, out on the 4th for $15. And Tom, you say it's basically like Hitman, but killing spiders?
It is. It is. I can 100% recommend this game. It is.
Okay.
It's a first-person, like almost Dishonored style immersive sim, but instead of it being magical, you're just a dude or a person in a house that has spiders in it, and you just have to go find the spiders and kill them and find them. And like there's this whole system where like you can pick up an object and then like very slowly like rotate it around. So like you can walk up to like, a book and like pick it up, and then you spin it and there's a spider on the back of the book, and it kind of has this like amazing Looney Tune timing to it where it'll like freeze for a moment and then like jump off the book and run away and like scurry under a door, and you gotta go get it. And like you have like guns to shoot the spiders and like flamethrowers, and like it just escalates insanely. It's actually like a lot of fun. It's basically you're just walking around different locations trying to find all the spiders and killing them. And it's very silly, but really, really, really fun.
I think I might get that. $15 sounds like a great price point for killing it with fire.
Yeah, and don't get it if you are arachnophobic, because it is like I'm only minorly afraid of spiders, right? Like the norm, like the sort of like like you'd assume the average amount afraid of spiders, and like even me, I'm like sometimes I'm like very unsettled by walking into a room and having to like open every drawer very slowly to see if there's a spider in it. Yeah.
That sounds really fun. And there's one more game out this week I wanted to mention. It's out today. It's called Nyoja. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sorry if I'm not. I intended to play this morning before the show, but because of all of the new Switch Pro rumors that happened overnight, I kind of spent my time looking up that instead. But I wanted to bring this up because IGN Japan gave it a 10 out of 10 when it launched on the Vita, I think in 2019. Crazy. And it was Japan only, but it was kind of a cult hit. And when I first saw the trailer for it, I was like, is this an anime single player Among Us? Because it is a sci-fi social deduction RPG in which you will engage in discussion with a variety of unique characters with the aim of identifying the Nyoja among the group, which pretends to be human. So I've heard the narrative is great. The story is amazing. You basically will replay through the game trying to uncover more clues and more information each time. And it just, it looks cool. It looks really neat. And I think 10 out of 10. It's got to be at least decent. So I'm gonna check this out, and I will come back and give you my hands-on impressions next week. Nice. But yeah, check that out. And now to move on to what we are actually playing. Brian, do you want to start off?
I'm still finishing up Bowser's Fury and 3D World, just chipping away at those, taking my sweet time with them, which has been great. Yeah, so not a lot to report there, and I'm playing a lot of Yakuza 0, but that's not on Switch, although it should be. They should fix that.
Yeah.
Seth, what are you?
Switch Nintendo.
Super Switch Nintendo?
Okay. As always, I've been playing Flight Simulator. That's a cool story for another podcast, even though we don't have a PC podcast or a Flight Simulator podcast.
Seth, you get me on Instagram every single time when you post a picture from that game, and I'm like, oh my God, Seth is traveling. Where's he going? It's like, oh, it's a video game. It's a Black Mirror episode.
There's a camera where it looks like you're looking out the window and you can like see the wing. So one day I just held up my Switch and I was like, I can't wait to do this again. But I went on Nintendo Online to play those new games that came for the Super NES. I played, I can't even remember the one I played. That's how much of an impact it had on me. I was like, this is a bad game. And then I was like, okay, I was clowning on Fire and Ice. It's time to put my money where my mouth is. So I started playing it, and holy bleep it out. That game is delightful. Absolutely play Fire and Ice. What a charming, challenging, fun puzzle game that is. I was only going to play it for a minute because I play every game that comes to online for a minute. because I'm usually like, that was not worth a minute of my time, but I tried it anyway. I ended up playing 2 hours straight of Fire and Ice, and I only shut it off because it was then 9 in the morning, which is when I start my work day. So yeah, Fire and Ice is legit. I know that like it's very collectible. If you find a collectible or a complete in box version of that game, it's like $150.
Wow.
On eBay, yeah. And I was always just like, yeah, but so is, let's color a dinosaur. That's also that's literally coloring dinosaurs with a dropper tool. So no, Fire and Ice. I highly recommend it. This is a wonderful game.
Well, thank you so much. I'll check it out now.
And I know maybe people are thinking, is this a goof? Is this a patented Seth Macy goof? No.
This is his paid thing. He got this. He was paid to say this.
Don't say that. People might believe you.
He's a big time Fire and Ice influencer.
Well, thank you for sharing it.
Fire and Ice was provided to me. #ad.
Buy Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah, thanks Nintendo Switch Online for this opportunity to play your game for free.
Yeah.
Unlike anyone else in the world. Tom, what are you playing?
I've been bouncing around between a lot of stuff. I've been playing a lot of Magic the Gathering, which is not on Nintendo. I have been revisiting things. I talked about revisiting Hollow Knight. Had to take a little break from that because it was hurting my hand to play, which is a weird thing.
I'm sorry.
If you want to hear that story, go listen to Podcast Beyond, this week's Podcast Beyond, because I talk about the DualSense controller hurting my hand with that game. I also dipped back into Celeste a little bit, which never stops being old. I went through the A side, B side, and C side of the first chapter and like managed to complete all of them in like a decent amount of time. And I was like, oh, I like didn't completely forget how to play this game, which is nice. Yeah, I've just been jumping around a lot and kind of enjoying it. I'm like, it's that weird sort of like it snuck up on me how busy the end of last year was with game releases. It snuck up on me how kind of like quiet it's been these last couple of months of like, I'm like, oh, I don't really have anything to super dig into right now, but hopefully that'll change soon with like Monster Hunter and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I have been playing primarily just Switch recently. So I finished Monster Sanctuary last night. It took me, I think, around 70 hours.
Wow.
Oh, but
that's quite an RPG.
Also consider that I would not settle for less than 5-starring every battle I did. So I 5-starred all of the champions, and if I ever got to an area and I was no longer 5-starring, I would retool my team. And those skill trees are massive, and there are a ton of monsters. And I would also make sure to get an egg for every single monster I encounter. Yeah, look at those skill trees if you're looking at YouTube. So there's a lot of things you can do. So I came to the last area, and I was now only 3-starring instead of 5-starring, and I can't have that. So I made a bunch of different teams until I figured out one that really worked, and I beat it. And I 5-starred the boss on my first try. So nice. And there's still some endgame stuff to do. And I think they're coming out with an update this month that allows you to start a new game plus with the monsters that you already have. So that sounds really cool. I'm excited for that. I've also played a little bit more of the Monster Hunter Rise demo. I've been taking it easy because it's an action game, so it's kind of hard on your hands. So I was just kind of playing it sparingly, but I did play more of the demo, and I got my time of fighting the Great Izuchi under 2 minutes with the hunting horn. So yeah, I'm gonna main the hunting horn in
that hunting. Who's not that hunting horn? Man?
It's so cool.
You know, right?
Cool.
Actually, no.
Seth,
I'm buying Monster Sanctuary. Every time you talk about it, I'm like, I gotta get that, and then I forget. Now I am buying Monster Sanctuary.
Do it.
It's on sale. It's 25% off, everybody. Yeah, $14.99. By the way, I'm the deals editor here. Commerce, IGN.com.
He was paid to say that.
No, I mean, actually, I was. That's
you were. You were literally saying your job title. Casey, I did want to give a quick shout out to eBay, because eBay is where I've been buying and looking up cool stuff from Super Nintendo or the Universal Nintendo world in Japan. we can't go there right now, obviously, but a lot of people are selling really cool stuff from it, including this Toko Toko Mario, which walks when you push it with a stick, and now he sits on my desk. And it's just super awesome because a lot of like times when you buy stuff from eBay from Japanese sellers, they're just incredibly meticulous with how well the things are packaged and organized. They don't come showing up smelling like cigarettes and covered in like chewing gum and stuff like that. So the seller actually threw in like a map and also a bag from the theme park. So I have this sort of like, I won't get to go there for a while, but this is super cool. And it's like holding me over. So there's tons of stuff they're selling from that theme park. I think they're just going in, buying it, putting it immediately on eBay. They're not like eating half of it like we probably would here. So go check that out. If you have FOMO for travel and you want to go to the Nintendo theme park right now, this is the next best step.
Yeah. Speaking of the Nintendo theme park, we just learned that the Nintendo portion of Universal in Orlando, Florida has now been delayed to 2025. So just
the bad news ever end.
I know. So now we're just going to have to go to Japan as soon as it opens up so that we can go to Nintendo Land. I know Pear said that he will sponsor all of us.
Yeah, he said all of us
go at the same time to cover it.
He did, which was super cool of him. Yeah, he said he was gonna, and he said we would have $1,000 a day stipend to buy whatever we want. That was super nice of him. Yeah,
all of the unboxing videos that we could ever want.
Isn't that great?
And now that we've said it on the show, he's beholden to it. So thank you so much, Pear. Really.
Yeah, that's definitely 100% real, and he has to do it now.
So we have very little time, but so really quick, this question is from Aaron Froman for Question Block. Would you rather be swallowed by Yoshi or Kirby? He says explain your answer, but we don't have time, so just pick one.
Kirby. I want to go out creatively. That feels fun.
Yeah, Kirby. I don't want to be no egg.
I don't want to immediately pass through Yoshi's digestive system and then get spit at a wall.
System and be an egg.
Yeah, I would rather become. I want to. If I'm gonna die, I want to see how Kirby thinks. Kirby thinks of me, really.
This is a wild take because I would say Yoshi because Yoshi just puts you in an egg. Kirby like canonically destroys all matter from existence that he swallows. So like I'm good. I'll just be an egg for a bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say Kirby so I could be one with Kirby, but hatching from an egg may be traumatizing, but at least I'll still exist. And with that, that is all the time we have left for Nintendo Voice Chat this week. So thank you everyone for your questions and thank you for watching and listening. NVC goes up every Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. And just as a reminder, we are moving to a different YouTube channel. If you are a watcher on YouTube, starting March 8th, we will post a link to that as soon as it is available. It is not available at this moment. But if you do have any questions for us, you can leave it in the comments or write to us at nvc@ign.com or respond to our weekly question block post on the Nintendo Voice Chat podcast forums on Facebook. Again, thank you so much for watching. And remember, NVC is the only place you can
get the thing.